When joining a waist and skirt, the joined waistline may be at the natural waist, the empire, or a dropped waist. There are three types of waistline finishes. One is the elasticized waist, where an opening is not necessary down the back of the garment, the side, or the front. The garment is elasticized after the waist and skirt are joined. We have the stabilized waistline, where both the waist and the skirt are joined with a stay stitch or a tape holding it. That type of waistline needs an opening, whether a zipper or buttoning. You may join a fitted waist to a fitted skirt, a gathered waist to a gathered skirt, or a combination of both. We'll now start fitting the waist and skirt on the dress form. The waist and the skirt are completed. The neckline is complete, the darts are stitched, the side seams are joined, any gathering that is necessary in the waist and the skirt are inserted. We place the garment on the dress form, pinning our back seam, matching center back thread trace to center back thread trace. Pin the garment to itself as opposed to pinning it to the dress form. Line up the back waist or the front waist to the side seam. At this point, you may anchor the garment to the dress form. As we are going to join a fitted waist, that is, there are darts in this waist, and notice that the darts have been stitched to just 1/4 of an inch below the waistline seam to enable the garment to fit easily. And your side seams are joined 1/4 of an inch below the waistline seam to give below that. That is not necessary if you use only 1/2 inch seam allowance. But with a 1 inch seam allowance, you must allow for fitting. Now, we will draw up the gathers to fit the front waist, pulling on your shirring stitch. Pull it up to the desired amount needed for your particular design, allowing ease, because a garment is generally worn over some undergarments, as well as the fact that the thickness of cloth and the skirt joining and our final tape will all be included in this joining. Pull it up so it gives you a semblance of what the garment will look like. We next take a piece of tape. We'll use seam tape, but there are times that a twill tape is just as good. Starting at the center back with a bit of seam allowance, pin the tape to the garment. If you wish to tighten up the garment a little bit more, pin the tape a little tighter. If you wish to leave the remaining ease, leave the required amount of ease in your tape. Notice that I am pinning this with the edge of the tape just touching my waistline seam line. Select 1/2 of the garment for the pinning. As much as it may look exactly the same on both sides of the garment, you may need to adjust one to the other. So it is more acceptable to mark it on one side only. We will mark with pins. And what do we mark? We mark the center front, the side seam, and I am marking just at the edge of my tape. The dart, if it is a necessary marking, that is, if you need to match your skirt up to the dart, and the center back. Remove your tape, leaving the marked pins in place. Now, since this skirt is going to require a little bit of gather, let's place it on the dress form to pull up some of the ease. Now we want to get it looking perky. We will draw up some more ease. You will not tie your ease off yet because you need the measurement of the tape that you would develop from the top of the garment to fit the skirt. We're gathering will distribute the ease evenly. That's not always the case. Sometimes you want to just locate the gathers in a specific area. Once this is drawn up sufficiently to enable you to start the joining process, we remove both parts of the garment from our dress form. Keep in mind the side of the garment that you did your fitting, and we will start joining the waist and the skirt. Before we join the two pieces, we must mark our tape. A pencil will do. I'll use a pen to show. We mark off, this is my center front, and we'll mark the pin which located us at the side seam and the center back. Now, important, we've got our tape all marked on 1/2 the garment. Fold it carefully so you will still maintain the same positioning, and mark off the opposite half of the garment. mark off exactly where you mark the original mark. And here we are. The next step is to take your skirt, and we're going to apply the tape to the skirt. We'll just put the waist aside for a few moments. And we'll start by matching the waistline seam of the skirt to the waistline seam of the top of the dress. Place the tape so it just touches that waistline seam. We'll not draw up any more ease. In fact, we may have to adjust the ease, and as you can see, this part of the tape seems to be larger. So we distribute our ease, letting it out a wee bit, and continuing the pinning of the tape to the skirt. Pin it across the entire waistline, matching center to center and side seam to side seam. Now, if I had tucks or darts in the front of the waist, and I wish to match them up to tucks or darts in the skirt, I would have marked the tape on the waist and then transferred those markings, those matching markings, to the skirt. One of the most difficult things in joining a waist and skirt is to maintain the matching points, the side seams and the center back. Once we have it all pinned, and notice the position of the tape. It's very important that you keep the tape position just above the waistline seam line, just touching it. We do not join in this tape in all the stitching. The tape is just stitched to the skirt. We will baste this tape to the skirt about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. With the tape basted to the wrong side of the garment, you now can tie off your threads and clip them if you're using a gathering stitch on the waistline. The next step is to stitch the tape to the skirt, and we will stitch along the very edge of the tape. Very, very edge. You still should be able to visualize your waistline seam, and that is the white stitch on this garment as the tape is stitched to the seam allowance area of the garment. With the tape basted into place and stitched into place, we remove it from the sewing machine, clip off your threads, and remove your basting stitch. Always keep in mind the step-by-step process of sewing is very important. We stitch and remove the basting. We press and then proceed to the next step. With this particular process at this point, we do not need to press, but of course we must remove all our basting. The next step will be to join the waist and skirt. We now have the set waistline seam. That is, the tape has matched all the points of the waistline, and we can take and join our waist to our skirt, bringing right sides together and matching. We match the side seams first. Always seems to go automatically to side seams because they're the ones that miss the most. Put a pin in straight through from the waist to the skirt, right at the side seam. And stick your pin in perpendicular to the seam, just to hold it in place. Take a match at the center back and place them together. Now you will notice that the waistline seam allowance of this garment has 1 inch on the bodice and 1/2 inch on the skirt. That's because we've got a lot of gathers and one does not need more seam allowance on the skirt. The alterations in fitting very frequently take place from the waist of the garment. We'll pin, following the seam line, the waist to the skirt. Center to center. Now, we tie off the waist gathers so that it will match the skirt, and distribute the ease where necessary, or match your darts where necessary. And continue pinning the waist and the skirt together. The matching points come out automatically if everything has been lined up correctly. This process may seem a little more complicated than others, but actually, if you follow the step-by-step method we use, you will not have any problems. We match up center back to center back. And once the whole thing is pinned, we do a little double checking. And the checking you do is to check that the length of the back from neckline to waistline is the same. Because once it's stitched, it's a little difficult to make alterations. So we take and bring the garment together. You see it is pinned, and measure from the neckline at the center back to the waistline at the center back. And the length should be the same. If it differs, then alter it. Give yourself a little more length or take away a little length so both halves are exactly the same. We now will baste it. Now, if you noticed, the pinning has taken place so it falls directly on the waistline seam line, which will fall a little bit below that row of white stitching. And that's all. We'll now baste the skirt and the waist together. And as soon as we finish our basting a little bit above the pins, you will remove your thread tracing, because too many rows of stitches in one place will only create a problem when you have to start removing your stitching. And we'll baste the waist and the skirt together. With the waistline basted, check a few things. First of all, check that your darts are facing in the right direction. As with this garment, the center back, the inside of the dart faces the center back. The side seam is pressed open, both on the skirt and the bodice. My gathers are in place, and I've distributed my gathering satisfactorily on the skirt side. The decision now in stitching is, am I going to stitch with the waist up, or should I stitch with the skirt? As I seem to have a great deal more gathering on the skirt side, I will stitch with the skirt up. You may stitch either way. We will follow the basting line, and that basting line falls right under the tape. So when we are ready to stitch it, we will stitch right under the tape. You do not want to run a row of stitching through the tape and through the garment. This is not that type of waistline joining. There are garments that are joined with the tape and the waist and the skirt with one process, but that is a garment that costs a little bit less and has a lower price point than the type of waist joining we're using. We're joining a waist and skirt with a better garment. Now we'll stitch right below our gathering stitch, because we do not want that showing on the right side, and at the same time we're stitching the waist and skirt in place. Now we're getting ready to try it on the dress form again. It's an important time, because we'll finally get a look at what our garment may look like when it's finished. Completely stitched. We remove the basting, and I did it. This is a very common occurrence. I didn't take enough care when I was stitching, and I caught some of the waist in the waistline stitching, see? So we just open up these little stitches, shouldn't take very long, to remove this mistake. Fortunately, it was only a few inches. But I did not take the precaution that I discussed with you on joining a straight edge to a gathered edge. This does happen on occasion, and it happened. We open the stitches, we come back to the sewing machine, and we restitch, making sure that the garment is in place. And we'll just stitch that over again and clip our threads. Mistakes happen to everyone, but the point is not to leave it there and rush off to another step. The point is to correct your mistake. And let's try it on the dress form. Of course, pressing is necessary. but we don't always press before we fit. One has to fit because perhaps there's an alteration and you don't want to have to press and then run into a trouble when you have to alter. We bring the waist and the skirt together and try it on, and it looks very good. It fits, and we've joined the waist and a skirt with a tape. To join a waist and skirt and insert an elastic, the skirt is finished, completely ready. The only thing that has not been joined is the waistline. The waist is completely finished. Seams finished, and we're ready to attach. With the skirt wrong side out, with the waist right side out. We'll take the waist and place it inside the skirt, matching back and front. Center front to center front, center back to center back. As you form your own tunnel with the waistline seam, you place the waist so you have approximately 3/4 of an inch extra seam allowance on the skirt side. Place center front to center front, center back to center back, making sure you keep a 3/4 inch seam allowance on the skirt and 1/4 of an inch on the bodice. If your skirt calls for gathers or pleats, that is all in place. If it calls for a matching waistline to the waist, that is in place. If you have a fuller waist than you do a skirt, that is ready to work with. And we will pin it entirely around the waistline. The next step is the basting. This too need not be done. It can be stitched very easily without any basting, but to make sure that you have the right positioning, you may want to baste it. You baste, leaving 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on the bodice side of the seam. I've already stitched this seam line with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on the bodice side, 1 inch on the skirt side. The next step is to position the seam allowance to allow the elastic to tunnel through the space we're going to leave. We now turn the seam allowance of the skirt up. That will cover the shortened seam allowance of the waist. You turn it into the bodice, and we will pin it in position. You're now working with a garment intact. There is no opening. So care must be taken that you do not pin the front of the garment through to the back. Therefore, you take your hand through the garment, through the neck or the sleeve, it doesn't matter, in order to hold the right side of the garment and the wrong side of the garment at the same time. And pin. Fold it over. Keep it going in the same direction. The one area that you have to be aware of is where your side seam falls, because you do want that to match. Now, once we finish pinning, we must evaluate this and make a decision where the opening will be left in order to tunnel the elastic through. One cannot stitch around completely and then cut a hole in the garment to let the elastic slip in. So we will probably leave an opening near a side seam. And once the elastic is stretched through the fabric, we can re-stitch the opening. Okay, I have it pinned. We do not have to baste, and I will not baste this time, but a precaution must be taken in stitching. It's a little tricky, but we have to open up the skirt and thread the garment under the needle. I guess that's all you could do. And you must be conscious at all times of not letting the other half of the garment get caught as you're doing it. Now let's find the side seam. Here we are. Leaving approximately 1/4 inch seam allowance, we will stitch following the whole seam line with the opening allowance to thread our elastic through. Now I'm going to be using an elastic approximately 1/2 inch wide. I must leave an opening for my elastic a little bit more than that 1/2 inch. If I leave it too wide, the elastic will twist and turn while wearing the garment. An opening for elastic must be only approximately 1/8 of an inch wider than the elastic itself. Now, let's start stitching. Carefully at all times, being aware that that's all we want under the needle is the one piece of garment that we are stitching on at the same time. We don't want to catch the other half of the garment. So we move very slowly around the waist, removing our pins as we go along. It's a lot of fabric. One must always be conscious of moving that fabric around. The row of stitching will be visible on the right side of the garment. we came to the other half of the garment. I just found the opposite side seam, so we just have the back to stitch, and we will be able to thread our elastic through. While stitching, you must also be aware that your garment is between the needle and the back of the sewing machine, and care should be taken that that area remain clean, because you can be cleaning your sewing machine with your garment while you're sewing. Okay, we're coming up on the side seam, and we will leave an opening of approximately 3/4 of an inch. Raise the needle and gently tug the thread away and remove the garment from the machine. And we have put in our row of stitching. We now will thread our elastic through. You look on the right side and check that you are even all the way around, because that is so visible. It would be very ugly if your stitching were not straight. Well, back to the wrong side, and we'll take our piece of elastic, and if you noticed, I put a safety pin to draw the elastic through. And let's go. As you thread your elastic through the fabric, make sure that that elastic remains flat and does not twist. At the same time, you should take a precaution to pin the end of the elastic to the garment, because nothing is more frustrating than threading your elastic through your tunnel and tugging, and then find that you will have to start all over again because you did not anchor the elastic at the beginning or when you started tunneling it. The process that I'm using is called tunneling. We're actually taking an elastic or a drawstring or a cord or some kind of a tie through a tunnel. If I were applying a whole separate strip of fabric to the inside or the outside of the garment, that would be called a casing, and you still would have to tunnel your elastic through. After a while, you'll find that maybe you have to urge the fabric over a little spot because the elastic may have gotten stuck. And we just have to keep coming, and we're coming to the end of our tunnel now. Just pull gently. You find that it needs a little bit of urging, and this is good because I have not made my tunnel too wide. Again, if it starts being too stiff, that means you've made your tunnel too narrow. Now we pull her through. There we are. Unpin the safety pin and catch the other side of your elastic. Don't let go. And overlap it. Overlap approximately 1/2 inch. How much elastic does one use? Well, one always should use at least 3 inches less than the waistline, finished waistline measurement, because you want your elastic to have some elasticity. And what we'll do now is stitch our elastic, reverse, and anchor it down so it will not open up in the tunnel. And let's tug it back into place. Well, there we are. We'll now return the garment to the sewing machine. We'll try it on the dress form when we finish stitching, but first we have to anchor or close up the opening that we left. And what did I say about not catching the under part of the garment? Guess who just did that? Well, there I go again. The minute one stops thinking about what one is doing and not concentrating on everything that's going on at the same time, a mistake is made. Now, back to the drawing board, and we'll start again. Catch it. Let's clear the sewing machine underneath. It's very crowded under there, and the tendency to catch the other half of the garment is always evident. We stitch. And we remove it. Clip your threads. And let's try it on our dress form again, just to see how well it fits. And if we're successful in joining a waist and skirt with an elastic. And there you are. A tie or a belt can be applied to cover the elastic. But we've joined a waistline with an elastic tunneled.